Joseph, for that very, very kind introduction. Yeah, if you were in a hospital emergency room, lucid enough to choose between a young, smart-looking, and articulate surgeon who had graduated a few years ago and just finished internship, and an unassuming, timid, and older-looking surgeon who has tucked under his belt numerous successful surgeries, who would you choose? Let me answer that question towards the end of my speech. Executive Director, Mr. Ed Hinsliff, you're correct earlier when you said that I was your guest speaker last July 30, 2014. To the officials and members of this esteemed chamber, to all the guests joining us today, a pleasant afternoon to everyone. As we speak, our nation is still struggling to defeat the coronavirus pandemic with so much uncertainty. Our economic charts show how this health crisis took an excessive toll on the Philippine economy, as our gross domestic product fell by a record 9.6% in 2020. While the signs of recovery may have been felt this year, 2021, with the availability of the vaccines, we know for a fact that this pandemic will leave deep and long-lasting scars, remarkably in a developing economy like ours. Our obvious failure to insulate our economy from the pandemic-induced recession has turned off our major economic drivers, particularly foreign and local investors. In fact, based on the 2020 World Bank Ease of Doing Business report, we are worse compared to our neighboring economies. We ranked 13th out of 14 Asia-Pacific economies in our foreign direct investment attractiveness scorecard. While our economic advisors trumpet positive projections, foreign experts see that the country's projected gross domestic product in 2025 will still be lower than its pre-pandemic forecasts. Unfortunately for us, the pandemic, worsened by greed and incompetence of some, has reversed our significant economic gains in recent years and magnified the already intrinsic problems that we face as a country: bad economy, corruption of incorrigible proportions, instability of peace and order, joblessness, poverty and hunger, not to mention our ballooning national debt and our maritime disputes in the West Philippine Sea. Just a couple of days ago, I presented before the Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines, or PHINIX, and the Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry, my economic roadmap, which carries concrete, realistic, practical, and sensible reforms that will be our key in steering our nation to recovery. It is thus an honor for me to be able to share with you all my proposed strategies, which are built on people's trust. Trust that we can heal our economic scars. Trust that we can shield our people from the existing brunt of the pandemic. Trust that our economic policies can win back our hope as a nation and can withstand the test of time. Healthy people, healthy economy. This is the battle cry of our platform of government in the new normal. Suffice to say that the call of our times has changed our perspective of progress from mere economic growth to the barest minimum requirement of recovering from our losses due to the pandemic. I say this with certitude. There is no trade-off between health and economy. These two facets serve as our lifeline as a nation in the years to come. Hence, I present a future-proof strategy in the new normal. Our steps moving forward must be clear, realistic, and adaptable to our state as a nation. It builds on concepts of responsiveness to where we are most vulnerable and data-driven knowledge of what lies ahead to ensure that our strategy remains practical and applicable. to withstand future threats brought about by the evolving conditions of the new normal. In future-proofing our health sector, we must first and foremost depart from our reactive response to the impact of this health crisis, which is driven by pandemic politics, one that perpetuates unconscionable opportunism at the most damaging time of our lives. Hence, there must be a proactive and coordinated response, putting to the front lines our local government units and private enterprises. These sectors are able and, most importantly, willing to take on the Herculean task of pulling us out of this crisis. The national government must rally and mobilize vaccination campaigns led by LGUs and the private sector, especially in hard-to-reach and high-risk populations. With this partnership, we can guarantee the wildest coverage similar to our present government-funded immunization programs for polio, measles, and extrapulmonary tuberculosis, among others. We will make this possible by ensuring that the Universal Healthcare Act will not only look good on paper, but one that actually serves its purpose: healthcare coverage to all Filipinos. Hence, we will fully fund the requirement of the high-cost stage of the Universal Healthcare Act to cover all barangays, subsidize PhilHealth premiums for all, especially for indirect contributory populations, and ensure optimal benefits for healthcare workers. We must not let another budget year pass with insufficient funding for UHC implementation, as in our case in the last 3 years since the passage of the law. We are at a point where the vicious on-off lockdowns hurt us more than it helps. The National Economic and Development Authority has estimated the costs of COVID-19 and the quarantines for the present and future generations at 41.4 trillion pesos. We shed 20.5 billion pesos per day when the government placed under ECQ the National Capital Region and its neighboring regions. To prevent another closure of the economy, our containment strategies must be intensified, institutionalized, and normalized. Contact tracing, testing, and treatment at zero cost to the public should be our anchor to our future-proof economic agenda. The pandemic-induced recession has magnified the already burdensome day-to-day living of an ordinary Filipino. Full-scale job losses, inflation of prices, and spike of poverty incidents have put us into a financial panic. But we must not fall trap to our economic distress. Economist John Keynes' discipline taught us that the government must be the spender of last resort. It has to pump money on the economic engine to keep the wheels rolling until such time that the people are ready and confident enough to step in the economic wagon. Spend as the government must, but the key here is judicious spending to benefit those who need it most, not a well-connected few who rake in large profits through overpricing and ghost or under delivery. As we already know by now, next year the national debt is projected to reach 13.42 trillion pesos. Credit watchers are already flagging our status due to our soaring debt to GDP ratio and widening deficit, thus even exacerbating our slow pace of economic recovery from the pandemic whip. It thereby goes without saying the need to undertake comprehensive reform programs to prime the fundamental drivers of economic growth. More than ever, we have to intensify our mutual cooperative efforts with partners and allies in the Asia-Pacific region to maintain the balance of power in the West Philippine Sea, our strategic maritime pathway to free, open, and inclusive commerce. Our mutual defense treaty with the United States of America remains in force, serving as our country's potent yet untapped weapon in our arsenal. Other foreign military powers have expressed willingness, either openly or during our conversations with their diplomats, to provide and maintain that balance of power. This also entails laying the groundwork to address business hurdles in our legislation. These efforts will boost our competitiveness to encourage foreign direct investments and leverage its trickle-down effect of more employment opportunities to our people. Enough with over-regulation of businesses and corporations, as this practice, when it goes beyond our competition policy, has no place in modern and civilized society, especially now that we need to encourage foreign investments and attract more capital inflow in the Philippines. My economic agenda hence commits to ensuring that economic reforms will not only pass our legislative meal but actually reboot our economy. 2 months ago, the Senate passed on third reading our Foreign Direct Investment Act, which puts our country in a more competitive edge for foreign players. Our amendments to the 30-year-old Foreign Investment Act of 1991 so we can leverage our regional comprehensive economic partnership with other key economies and makes an attractive market for foreign capital. Our thrust must be on robust economic measures that can substantially impact our global competitiveness. Of equal weight, we could not turn our heads away from the fate of our micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MSMEs, comprising 99.5% of all enterprises and 63.2% of the labor force, which took the first blow last year because of the implementation of widespread community lockdowns. To cure this bleeding, we must push for recovery startups through comprehensive and targeted fiscal stimulus packages, implement eviction and foreclosure moratoriums, and employee retention for tax credits to aid our businesses in reopening and staying afloat. It is likewise incumbent upon us to resolve poor incentives to local enterprises. I could not help but to be reminded of the ill fate of a local entrepreneur who invested 200 million pesos to retool his equipment to help produce face masks early last year, only to be shortchanged later by no less than his own government, courtesy of the DBM procurement service, when it favored expensive face masks through wheeling and dealing and favored Chinese traders, as if adding salt to an already open wound. These traders duped us by evading tax obligations. Displaying their arrogance, they had the gall to purchase pricey luxury cars. Moving forward, our goal is to unceasingly create jobs so our people can go back to work. One idea is to utilize cash for work mechanisms by encouraging public-private partnerships. This we can do by tapping the corporate social responsibility arms of corporations in pursuing initiatives to provide cash payments under decent work conditions to enable our people to get back on their feet. My proposal is also to capitalize on our able and talented youth sector who have potential to drive our economy. I am pushing for a paid internship program where poor and deserving college undergraduates, even junior and senior high school students, can undergo paid internships in government offices as well as in private corporations and businesses in order to maximize their skills development and productivity. This can improve the country's very low 31% growth mindset among the 15 to 18-year-old segments of our young population. Along with this, we will provide a social safety net, especially for those who are pushed to the brink. In large part, we must reinvent are conditional cash transfer, also known as the 4Ps, with the overarching principle that every Filipino should reach the poverty line with a sustainable livelihood or employment opportunities, instead of permanently relying on dole-outs. My economic agenda also puts forward a bold vision of improving our country's tax administration to pump up our revenue collection. I have long been proposing the cross-referencing data between and among our major revenue collecting agencies and the other relevant government offices like the Land Transportation Office, Land Registration Authority, Securities and Exchange Commission, Department of Trade and Industry to plug our tax collection leakages. In my long years as a public servant, I have always looked up to the captains of business and industry, like most of you, in driving the economic stability and growth of our country. We could really take off from what we have learned from successful business corporations in terms of efficient and strategic management to shepherd our way to recovery. You and I would agree that our economic ills are largely hinged on the tradition of political corruption. What we endure is the bankruptcy of our bureaucracy, where government spending is wasteful and unnecessary and departs from our priorities, resists change, and sticks to the old ways. More than ever, we must reinvent our government. We should depart from the more of the same mentality. It is time to discipline the bureaucracy and fix government to treat the business sector as partners in economic growth and development instead of competitors. Even before this health crisis, I have been vocal in my advocacy to boost the digitalization of government processes, as automation and interoperability in government agencies will be key in monitoring or improving the efficiency of our business transactions, raising our revenue collections, and ultimately minimizing, if not totally eradicating, corruption in all levels of our bureaucracy. To this end, I will guarantee a historic increase of budget infusion for our research and development efforts, which now stands at a ridiculously pitiful share of 0.4% of the national budget. As I have consistently stood for in all the years that I have been diligently scrutinizing the expenditure program of the national government, I saw the need to reallocate the national budget to provide adequate resources commensurate with the mandated functions of the local government units. A meaningful devolution, not only on paper, but the actual downloading of functions and fair share of budgetary resources to the local government units, including capacity building interventions to make them competitive, especially those municipalities in the 5th and 6th class categories. This is the essence of my advocacy program called the Budget Reform Advocacy for Village Empowerment, or BRAVE. Moreover, it is time to shift from the age-old practice of imposing a budget ceiling for the national agencies to work on to a zero-based budget planning as a takeoff from the best practices of big private corporations in implementing a bottom-up approach in budgeting to address the actual needs and priorities of our local government units. This is our budget reform to improve the delivery of basic services, creating employment opportunities, and improving the lives of our people, especially in the disadvantaged, far-flung communities. A bonus outcome of this approach is decongestion of a few highly urbanized metropolitan areas, best exemplified by Metro Manila and Metro Cebu. If only the government commits to provide greater opportunity or equity in resource allocation, trusting the LGUs as the national government's partners for development, but with greater accountability in fiscal management, in due time, the culture of mendicancy and patronage politics will be a thing of the past. As we are about to traverse the crossroads of these trying times, we are in dire need of leadership by example, one that breaks away from the politics of double standards, double speak, and lip service, and stands for the rule of law, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability, the very tenets of good governance. In all my 50 years in public service, I have consistently adhered to a personal credo. What is right must be kept right, and what is wrong must be set right. Now, going back to my opening question, let me answer it this way. Between Senate President Soto and my vice presidential candidate and me are 83 years of government service experience, including 42 years of legislative work as senators of the Republic. Ladies and gentlemen of AmCham, the country is in a state of emergency. We are capable enough and ready to perform this surgery. I thank you all for this opportunity. Mabuhay tayong lahat.
All right, thank you for that, Senator Ping Lacson. We indeed learned a lot from your presentation. Sir Eb, would you like to say something?
No, just think that, like I said, this is one of the most pro-business candidates we have out there. Good delivery there. So let me turn it over now to our president and head of Quezon Power, Mr. Frank Thiel, to take on the questions and answers. Frank, over to you.
Thanks, Ev. Good afternoon, Senator Lacson. I'm glad to have you as a guest speaker today, sir. I really enjoyed the last part of your presentation. That was very thoughtful, very insightful as well. I have the privilege of being the Q&A moderator this afternoon, so I'll be asking quite a few questions. I apologize in advance. We're going to be touching on a lot of subjects. But we're trying to cover as much ground as possible with you this afternoon, taking advantage of the fact that you put together such a great presentation, have such great messages for everyone, and especially for the country. One of the things that has already been flashed on the Q&A, and I had it as an additional question, has to do with COP26. As you know, COP26 is currently underway in Glasgow in Scotland. And we're just curious to know what sort of impact do you see coming out of that will affect the Philippines in particular? Anything related to climate change, anything related to the energy policy of the country? Just curious to what your views may be, what you expect may come out of COP26. I believe that we have a large delegation of the Philippines attending the sessions there. And so we're all keen to hear what your views on this may be.
Well, it's good that the leaders of the different countries in the world are meeting in Glasgow, because the impact is not only on the Philippines, but other countries as well, like Australia and other tropical countries, because climate change is really has a telling effect on warmer countries. The climate in the Philippines, as you know, we are a tropical country, and there's a dire reality, that we have to contend with and we have to grapple with, because as I have read, if we do not reduce the fossil fuel reduction in 2025 by 25%, then we are in bad shape. And we have to reduce the we have to go through the fuel fossil reduction by 75% in 2050. Otherwise, we don't have an Earth to speak of in the year 2100. Frank, you and I will no longer be here, but our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren will still be here to witness the extinction of the Earth if we really do not put our heads together and solve this the global warming. So that's it. So I'm glad that the leaders of the powerful countries in the world, the more influential countries, are there and meeting and trying to crack their heads, put their heads together in solving this problem that as of this moment, medyo intangible. No? We haven't seen the effect yet, but yeah, in due time, if we don't care about our environment, then that's it. The dire consequences.
No, indeed, Senator Lacson. I mean, this is something that impacts not only the Philippines but also countries all around the world, and we're obviously all keen to hear what comes out of COP26. Unfortunately, a couple of the major players are missing. As you know, Russia and China did not send any delegations, and so it'll be interesting to see what actually comes out of the out of COP26 and what the actual impact will be, in particular to the Philippines. So it'll be interesting to get that perspective later on. Thanks for answering that question. You alluded to this in your presentation, but I really would like to ask this question. The Philippines is competing against a lot of other countries to attract foreign direct investment. No question about that. The Philippines is a very attractive destination. We have a larger skilled workforce, English-speaking workforce, and yet we find that the country is challenged to attract additional foreign investment. What do you think needs to be done to make the Philippines a more attractive country for foreign direct investment? What could be done as you look forward?
First, we already passed 2 months ago, as I mentioned in my speech, the amendments to the Foreign Investment Act of 1991. This will open up to foreign investors, I mean the country, you will be able to participate and invest 100% in MSMEs and other business ventures, except for a negative list that during the time of, I think, the late President Aquino, we have a negative list. It is a long list of industries that foreign investors will still be limited in participating. But that's one. Second, and I think the more important one is, we should not change policies midstream. And that's one pitfall, one of the pitfalls of the different administrations of this country. Our PDP, our Philippine Development Plan, is only good for 5 years or 6 years. There's no continuity, unlike in the United States, where you can plan much ahead, 20 years ahead even. I think we should change our mindset in this regard. We should improve on our infrastructure. We have spent a lot in our Build program, but I think it still leaves much to be desired. Now, my main platform is to empower the local government units. We are so congested in Metro Manila, in Metro Cebu, Metro Davao, and some highly urbanized cities in the country. We need to disperse resources of this country by way of the national budget. It's good that the Supreme Court has ruled on the Mandanas case. But then, as we continue to scrutinize the budget, we've been through the budget on the committee level. And we found out that most of the compliance, even to the EO 138, Executive Order 138 issued by President Duterte, parang compliance on paper. I don't need to delve into the details of this, but we have the records to show that there is, lacking in implementation to comply with the Mandanas ruling. But as we go on, we can discuss more on this issue.
Thank you, Senator Lacson. Clearly, infrastructure is improving. We see evidence of that. We see more roads, more bridges, more rail coming in. And there's opportunity to do more, of course, and that will make the country even more attractive. And I do agree with you that the long-term planning is key. The short-term planning just doesn't cut it as well. But certainly, the long-term planning is something that we will support, of course. I have a question that is very relevant to what's happening to the Philippines right now, and it has to do with the prices of commodities. As you know, fuel, steel, cement prices have gone through the roof, and that's having an impact on the construction sector in the Philippines, on the manufacturing side as well. Power rates are high. Is there anything that the government can do? Are there any countermeasures in place to help mitigate the effect of the high commodity prices right now?
Yes, brought about by successive fuel prices hike. No,
Indeed.
well, government intervention is key. In these trying times, there's a provision in the train law that we passed. Other business or other economists are suggesting that we amend the train law to allow, because the train law that we passed has a lifespan, 2018 to 2080. But then there's a provision, I think it's in section 43 of the train law, that allows the Department of Finance to suspend the increase in the excise tax of fuel products. But it will not result in foregone revenues. Why? Because this provision states that the level of the excise tax rate will stop at the time when the excise tax is suspended. Meaning, if we are at 60 pesos per liter today, and the DOF decides to suspend not the implementation, but the adjustment of the excise tax rates, then it stops at computing it at 60 pesos per liter. So there will be no foregone revenues. But of course, there will be no added revenues in the meantime. But these are stopgap measures. Again, since the public transport industry is at the receiving end, they've been receiving a beating on this, and it radiates to the other industries, even manufacturing, because you have your employees commuting. So we need government intervention again, maybe in the form of ayuda or assistance to help out the public utility operators and drivers.
Thank you, Senator Lacson. We obviously hope that the administration will take note of that and effect some measures, because obviously the impacts that we're seeing are affecting everyone, not just some sectors, but everyone across the board. So hopefully some of these measures will be put in place before long, and that can alleviate some of the things that we're seeing right now. I do have a couple of questions that came in, and quite a few actually in the chat box. One in particular, this came from John Force within the AmCham group. When the Senate resumed session on November 8th, Senator Recto is currently delaying a vote on approval of SB 2094. This is the substitute bill on PSA amendments. This is one of the most watched economic reforms by foreign investors and foreign governments at this time, and could result in major foreign direct investment inflows. How can you assure us that this reform will take place in this Congress? I guess that's the question that John is posing.
Because of the urgency. First, I'd like to correct the impression that Senator Recto is not delaying it. He is just doing his part as a legislator, because, in the Senate, unlike the lower house, we don't practice cloture. Now, you can interpolate all you want as long as you get the right answers. But at the end of the day, we have to vote on the bill. It is being sponsored by Senator Grace Poe and co-sponsored by Senator Dillon. But I assure you that it will pass. There are some constitutional issues regarding the definition of public utilities, because it is clear during the deliberation of the 1987 Constitutional Convention that certain sectors cannot be reclassified as public services. They will have to be to stick as public utilities. So it is being resolved by the senators as we speak. And when we go back to the session hall and continue our plenary debates. But one thing, and I can assure you, because we have already discussed it in the Senate lounge in several caucuses, it will pass. That will pass.
Okay, that's great to hear. I'm sure John is taking a note of this right now. So thanks for answering that so forcefully. We appreciate it. There was another question that came in regarding holidays, and would you be in favor of what is called a holiday rationalization bill, such as that of Representative Joy Salceda, which is favored by the foreign managers in particular, in an unpublished study that will seek to limit the non-working holidays to only one a month, as opposed to the number that we see right now.
I could not agree more, no, because we're a country of holidays. We have the longest Christmas season. We have the longest holidays. If we compare our holidays with the other countries' holidays, then probably we have the most. So I fully support the proposal of Congressman Joey Salceda along this line.
Oh, fantastic. Well, one of the things we enjoy here are the holidays, that's for sure. So business aside. Okay, I received a couple of really interesting questions also in the chat box. And I hope you don't mind if we ask you this. If you were not a presidential candidate, who would you vote for this position?
I'll still vote for myself. I don't care if it becomes a stray ballot, but I'll still vote for myself.
Okay, appreciate that, the honesty on that answer. What would you, again, this is kind of along the same lines, what will the country's foreign policy look like under President Lacson administration? What will be the priorities and where does the U.S. fit in the same?
Well, it will still be an independent foreign policy, not pro-US, not pro-China, but pro-Philippines. I'm sorry, no. But all foreign policies of all countries in the world is anchored on national interest. Now, maybe you're referring to the West Philippine Sea because the United States has a key role to play in the disputes because we have an existing, this is I think a 70-year-old treaty that has not been revisited, but it's fine because as I mentioned in my speech, this is a potent weapon in our arsenal, yet untapped. No, but we're not warmonger. We're not here to engage China in a third world war. Nobody wins a global warfare. But it is important that we maintain our balance of power in the West Philippine Sea. And I'm glad during my talks with diplomats from different countries, Canada, Australia, even Japan, they are also interested in securing the maritime trade in that particular area in the West Philippine Sea. So right now, as we all know that we already won the arbitral ruling, but it is not implementable. We know that for a fact. It remains there. It's permanent, but it cannot be implemented. And based on my readings, what can actually help in the implementation or the observance or compliance to the arbitral ruling is pressure from the international community. And we should aim for that, because after all, we won the arbitration and we need to be assisted by militarily strong countries like the United States and the European countries as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Lacson. I mean, I think we all appreciate your message of respect and trust. I think the message, especially that resonated with all of us in particular, the trust part, very, very important that be applied. I continue to receive questions. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get to all of them, but I'm going to try and do my best to ask some of the most relevant ones that are coming through right now. The question has come out on pork barrel. You've been doing a great job trying to limit that all along and trying to ensure that that doesn't get added into the budget. Is there anything else that you can do, anything that you will be looking to do to try and control that in the future?
Yes, we should disperse, as I mentioned, we should disperse the national resources down to even to the barangay levels, because as we have been talking to local government officials, they know that they are the most the best persons to know the needs and priorities of their localities. National government, there's a big disconnect between the national budget and the needs and priorities of our local government units. So 5th and 6th class municipalities remain in those categories, for the longest time, because they have no share in the budget. I talked to one mayor in a 6th or 5th class municipality in Leyte. Their local revenue, according to him at the time, was 1 million pesos. That's the local. That's Tabon-Tabon in Leyte. And their share in the internal revenue allotment was a pitiful 23 or 27 million pesos. Now, the threshold for development is only 20% if you use the IRA. So say if you have 20 million share in the internal revenue allotment, you only have 4 million for development because the others are already earmarked for the Sangguniang Kabataan, for MOE, for Calamity Fund, and so forth and so on. So that's when national government should come in and disperse resources so that these municipalities may have the opportunity to uplift the lives of their constituents. So that's the primary program that we intend to implement. That's our advocacy for the longest time, as far as I can remember, and we intend to really pursue that to the hilt. We're drowning in budget in budget here in Metro Manila, but look at our far-flung communities. They're deep in poverty and hunger. So.
Good luck with those efforts, Senator Lacson. We wish you the best on that. We have a lot of young people on the call, and I can see that, and I can say that because I can see the level of questions that are coming in. We have a question here which is probably pretty relevant. What is your overall vision for the Filipinos by 2028, such as how Lee Kuan Yew made Singapore from third world to first world? So this is probably being asked by a very young person that is looking at the future and wondering what is life going to be like in the Philippines in 2028.
My dream or vision for the country is, first, I want our people to restore their trust in our government. And trust is something that you cannot demand. Trust is something that you must earn. And good governance can do it. There should be equal opportunity for all. And I am dreaming of the day when Filipinos can stand and walk with their heads held up high, because over time, we've lost that. Imagine even in our own country, we're being pushed around by foreigners. I'm not referring to Americans, by the way. So we want our people to live with dignity. We want our people to get back their self-respect. That's my vision, especially for the younger generation of this country.
That's great. That's a great message, especially for the younger people in the Philippines. I hope they're all paying attention to the comments that you're making this afternoon. Just a couple of additional things that have come from the chat box. How will the Philippines engage China in seeking solutions to the country's economic imbalance? This is really a very relevant question in today's economy.
Yes, in spite of the disputes in the West Philippine Sea, we should continue our bilateral, especially in trade, relations with China. China is a big trading partner, as well as the United States and other countries like Japan. But we should maintain that. But we should also be at par with. We should be more competitive. That's why in my speech I mentioned infusing more budget on research and development. Imagine, how can we compete with other countries when we only dedicate 0.4% of the national budget on our research and development? Frank, we're very fond of engaging in Google search. Whenever we need something, we resort to Google and look for something to shop. Why can't we harness our own talents? Our talents are staying somewhere, some other places in the world where their talents are being harnessed, not to the benefit of the Filipino people, because we procure the things that they invent, that they help create, no, abroad. So yes, we should really look at the budget being infused into research and development. I'm an advocate of research and development rather than just buying what we need and what we want.
Well, we believe that there's a lot of talent in the Philippines, and AmCham has been promoting the idea of pushing forward the creative industries that are here in the Philippines. So we think there's great potential associated with that, and hopefully that will come to fruition and provide additional opportunities for young, smart people in the Philippines, and to project themselves and get a foothold and be better remunerated, and that I think will help a great deal. We've been watching the Banco Central president. He's been making regular statements about economic projections for the Philippines. One of the things that we're seeing, which has been quite interesting, is the projections for inflation in 2022 seem to be quite low. There's a lot of optimism that inflation is not going to rear its ugly head, perhaps, and create a problem for the economy. But just curious to know, what do you see are the risks? What could derail those optimistic projections in 2022?
Well, we should really address the pandemic. That's first, because as I said earlier, also in my speech, there's no trade-off between health and economy, and to be able to strike a balance between the two is the biggest challenge, especially in these trying times. We made some lapses. We had some lapses in addressing the pandemic earlier on. I remember what comes to mind easily is the Wuhan couple who traveled from Cebu to Dumaguete and then to Manila. When we asked the health officials, government officials, how did they do in contact tracing? And the answer was only 17% of the co-passengers were contacted. And then they did not stop the influx of Chinese tourists and visitors, because according to them, China is a friend. But being friendly to another country, from preserving the health or protecting the health of your own people. You can be friendly by not welcoming them for some valid reasons. So that I cannot understand. And so here we are now. We are of course improving. And then the handling of the vaccination program leaves much to be desired. This is my opinion, because I've been exposed to several Senate inquiries in this regard. It seems that the national government has favored one particular brand, which, as health experts would tell us, the efficacy is not so good compared to the other brands that we have. As early as June, I remember Secretary Lacson, the DFA Secretary, and Ambassador Beg Romualdez. They even Ambassador Romualdez particularly informed me through a Viber message that he was very enthusiastic, because according to me, they talked to Secretary of State Pompeo, and they got the go signal for the procurement or delivery of several many doses of Pfizer. Unfortunately, this was mishandled. So Singapore took the advantage and got all those vaccines instead of the Philippines, which was given priority by no less than your own Secretary of State, in coordination with the manufacturer of Pfizer vaccines. So these are the things that we should review. And unless we leak or we get out of this health crisis, we cannot talk of a healthy economy. That's one thing sure. So first things first.
Great, thanks, Senator Lacson. I have another question. It's a bit of a long introduction to the question. I'll try to cover it as best as I can. 75 years have elapsed since we gained our independence from the US, but in relative terms, we're going backwards instead of progressing. That is, from a top position in economic development in our part of the world, we're now going down to a position where we're just slightly ahead of Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. You yourself have mentioned that we still have widespread poverty and hunger. Our education is in a very bad state. In all our current worldwide rankings, the Philippines is at the bottom for positive factors and at the top on the negative factors. What has caused all of these deteriorations? Can you be more specific as to what you have to do to reverse these unfavorable terms? You have been in government for a long time and you have seen these bad developments. In a sense, you have not been able to deal effectively with this huge problem. So what will you do as president to make a clear and big difference?
Thank you. I have been vocal about this. The biggest problem of this country is government. And the solution lies in the face of the problem itself. It's also government. Well, from bad government to good government, many things, positive things can happen. Yes, I've been in government for more than 50 years. That is true. I handled the executive position in the PNP and in the military. Now I'm with the legislature. Now, Senator or Senate President Vicente Soto and myself has always been open to, has always been vocal about this. It's time that we implement the laws that we have legislated, because our authority is limited to legislation. A lot has to do with implementation, not only in the national budget, but in the laws that we passed. And I think, given the chance, God willing, we'll be able to reverse, not in 6 years' time, but at least we'll be able to initiate something for the betterment of our countrymen. Yeah, thank you.
Great answer, Senator Lacson. Thank you. Along those lines, I mean, is there anything in the government bureaucracy that you look to trim down completely or do away completely? Is there anything in particular that you would look and say, we can do without this? Anything that is in your current vision or plan for the future?
I think right now we have a bloated bureaucracy. Something must be done. And the civil service system in this country is not as good as the civil service system in other countries, particularly in Europe. For example, even in a hung parliament, under a hung parliament, there's no leader, but the country continues to function because of a very strong civil service. Now, in our case, the risk of being unstable as a government goes with the the health of the president or the availability of the president to control everything, to implement the programs of the government. So we need to modernize our civil service. We need to create a program to attract the best and talented recruits. Again, corruption is at the center of all these challenges and issues.
Thanks, Senator Lacson. Talking about the creative industries, John Forbes reminded me that Senator Pimentel will be delivering his sponsorship speech on this bill. We hope you can support it as well. We think that's a very positive thing for the country. I think it's going to open up a lot of great opportunities. So we hope you can actually support that as well. Talking about another topic, and it's probably going to be our last question for the day, is the drug issues and the violence of the drug war has tarnished the country's image here and abroad, of course. How will you and Senator Soto try to solve a problem that even big countries like the US has not been able to solve altogether? How will you see that evolving?
Unfortunately, the present administration for the last 5 years has concentrated on law enforcement. Senator Soto and I have already talked about this a lot. We should have a holistic approach in dealing with the drug problem in the country. We should concentrate or focus more on rehabilitation and prevention. No. There's no other way because you can kill as many drug suspects, drug pushers as you want, but you cannot solve the problem of drugs if you don't deal with the supply or the demand. No? More important to us is the reduction in the demand for drugs. How? By prevention and rehabilitation. As long as there are users, there will be sellers or suppliers. So it should be a holistic approach, not less law enforcement, more prevention and rehabilitation. It should be an all government approach, not just law enforcement.
Indeed, Senator Lacson, it's a very tough problem, and it's very strong all over the world, and I think you're focusing on solving that in the right direction. So good luck with that. We hope you're successful if you have a chance to implement it. I think we're coming to the end of the Q&A session. I'm mindful of the time, and I really want to thank you for the candid answers that you have provided to the multiple questions that we asked. As you can see, we touched on a lot of things, but it was indeed a privilege to have you on as a guest speaker today. And thank you for the presentation, and thank you more than that for answering all the questions that we put forward. Some of them were a little bit tough. I apologize for that, but I think you gave us some really great answers, and we hope all the best for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you, Eb. It's nice to be back.
Thanks, Senator. Good to see you again, as always. I think we see each other. It's just when you're speaking at AmCham, not so often. So, I got it on my calendar. 7 years from now, we'll have you back. 28. No, much before that, I'm sure. But anyway, thanks so much. I mean, we know how busy you are, and we wish you all the best in the campaign. We appreciate all you do for business, and as a senator, it'd be a shame to lose you as a senator, but it'd be so bad to have you as a president as well. So we really do appreciate the time you spent today. I'm sure you get a great audience, by the way. I don't know, like I said, the leaders of industry. So, and again, thanks to all of our attendees today. It's great to have our new members with us. Look forward to providing value to our new members as we continue to grow and struggle. If you haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated, folks. We got to get this economy going. The only way to do it is to get the vaccination rates up to what we need. That's my speech always. So Christmas is around the corner, so we want to make sure the economy gets going. So get out there, spend some money, buy something, help our economy. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks, Senator. Catch up very soon. When you help you, let us know.